Alright, so this is my attempt to make some network content that takes less than 2 hours to watch. I'm going to do a replay review of two Itinerant Protesters games, kind of playing the Tao decks that we've been workshopping a lot, against a version of the Skunk Void Asa list that you can see up on screen. I think this video was technically recorded before the Violet level clearance ban, but as you can see, this Asa list is playing without Violet level clearance, which maybe makes me think this was actually after, and I'm getting my timeline a little bit wrong. But you can see this is a sort of, I think you could call it a standard Voidworks Asa, or as I often call it, Skunkworks. The two key cards in the deck, sort of, that give it a name are Anoetic Void and Managarm Skunkworks, both of which trigger when the runner approaches the server that they are installed in. Both cards are upgrades, and Managarm Skunkworks says when the runner approaches the server, they must spend 2 clicks, pay 5 credits, 2 clicks, or pay 5 credits, or end the run. And then Anoetic Void says the corp may pay 2 cards and 2 credits to end the run. And so the way this works is the corp can then make the runner spend the resources, 5 credits or 2 clicks, and then hard end the run just with the Anoetic Void. So this is a very powerful way to close out a game, but it's a little bit more expensive in the mid game, where those cards are often a big part of your tempo and might be agendas that you need to score in future turns. So this deck is looking to go really fast and go very wide. The reason it likes to go wide is the card Fully Operational, which is a EC release card that says it's an operation and spend 1 credit, and it's gain 2 credits or draw 2 cards. Repeat this process for every remote that has a piece of ice installed and a card in the root of the remote. This card allows Asa in particular, which lets you install 2 cards for a single click, go really wide, really fast, draw through their whole deck, find the agendas, and find the right pieces of ice to score. And then this deck is using Anoetic Void and Managarm Skunkworks to sort of seal the deal and make sure that you actually can get the win. So that's what our court player, Veiled Netrunner, is going to be playing. And then we're going to have this Reg Tau list piloted by Mulligan, who also goes by other names in other places. GinevraMakes is there. They are might be found easier to find on Discord. And this Tau list is a lot. You can see it's 24 events, and then basically all of the events, all of the hardware, and all of the resource, and all of the and 3 of the 7 resources basically all gain money or draw cards. So this deck is very focused on trying to get a fast game going, so they can use its Engolo and Paperclip to really just kind of tear down remotes quickly, stay sort of bouncy in the econ. It's not necessarily looking to make 50 credits and then run a bunch, but it's looking to be able to make threatening runs and never dip, stay between 3 and 10 credits the entire game. So we're going to watch these two players play against each other. And I'm going to talk mostly about the first couple of turns, though I may go through the whole game depending on how it goes. Alright. So mulligans are a really complex subject. The biggest thing you want to think about is you want as many of your cards as possible to be good on turn 1 when you're trying to make your mulligan. How many good cards you need and which cards they are depend on the deck. But in basically every Asa list for the last 2 years, if your opening hand has a Rashida in it and the piece of ice that says subroutine and the run, you're often going to want to keep this hand just because of how strong installing both of these cards for a single click is with the Asa ability. So this hand seems like a snap keep to me. You've got potentially against Schaefer, depending on what you draw. You could go Rashida, Gatekeeper in a remote, Slot Machine on HQ, install the Nico in the new remote, or install something else depending on what you draw. So this seems like a great keep. I think we're going to go through, do the whole runner or the whole corpse side, and then try and swap sides and look at what the runner was doing. But I think it's worthwhile an exercise to try and play this with just the corp information, thus the black bar at the top, because the replay system's just a touch broken at the moment. Alright, so see Vale drew a fully op. I'm not going to go through click by click. I'm probably going to spend more time. I feel like there's been a mistake. See sort of the play I was talking about, Rashida and Gatekeeper. I don't love the draw here because you've got a fully operational and you had other things you could do with a click, like Slot Machine and Nico Campaign. But it's not terrible here. And then installing the Slot Machine on HQ makes a lot of sense. I generally am a bigger fan of installing Ice on HQ in ASA because you need the cards in your hand to keep going. And there's enough cards that the runner can trash or steal that it's worth protecting your HQ. And there just is not a lot of turn 1 R&D pressure in the game right now. If the runner spends 4 credits to install a conduit and run R&D 3 times, they probably only see 3 cards and don't have any money, so it ends up being a pretty bad tempo play for them. With only 5 credits, we obviously cannot res both of our ice, so this ice is more to scare the runner rather than actually keep them out. Alright, so we see the runner expose a Gatekeeper, and they run R&D. Makes a lot of sense. Exposing ice is a card that I think we're really growing to like in Tao. And then we see the runner run server 1. I'll talk more about this later, but I think this is a run I don't love. Because as the corp, this is a automatic res. It protects Rashida. It's going to draw us 3 cards. Let's see, we select the one agenda, we shuffle it back. I personally would probably not shuffle that agenda because it's pretty good to have an agenda in hand so that you can score if you feel like you want to. We fired off, or no, we're about to, oh right, we drew through from the Gatekeeper, we're about to fire the Rashida, and this is just a fantastic board state for us. We're going to be able to make a new remote, probably with Nico Campaign, put another Rashida in server 1, and play a fully operational, and we'll have another left in our hand after all of that to give us a lot of draw. We are in fact now missing an agenda, which is part of why I don't love shuffling the Hagen back. So especially when you see a Shaper play, yeah, I guess this install of the Teleport contract came later. We do see a paperclip in the bin, which is important to keep in mind. Nico Campaign, Hagen. Rashida goes in server 1. Installing a Jeeves in the new remote is fine. I would want the money pretty badly here. We do have expensive things we want to be resing, and there's ways the runner could deny us here. Getting the Jeeves down a click earlier, a turn earlier is not enormous, because we're unlikely to be doing the same action 3 times next turn, but it could happen. See the runner doing some probing. Generally, you expect to lose 1 to 2 agendas off of R&D because it's just a bad server to ice until they really put a threat down. In a lot of cases, you want to go faster, and it's very easy to draw through an R&D lock in this list with fully operationals. So now we're seeing the first sort of interesting inflection point. They're playing a Tread Lightly on server 2. Which is our Hagen and Nico campaign. Obviously, we can't res the Hagen. If we had fully opt instead of the Jeeves and taken, we would be up. We would have spent 1 and gained 6 more credits, so we'd be at 10 credits. So we could, in theory, res the Hagen. Probably wouldn't. I don't think you would spend 10 credits to protect a net 7 asset. It's just not, the math doesn't quite work out. We want to go down 3 credits, especially when they have a paperclip in the bin, so eventually they'll be able to get back to that Hagen anyway. Okay, we res the Rashida, fire it, good spot, and yeah, this is sort of why the line of playing the fully op versus putting on agendas is fine. We can actually this Jeeves play looks smarter now and sort of. So I don't. Oh, actually no, they're gonna undo this click. Yeah. So I think the play to me here is the runner's on 7 credits. They have a paperclip in the bin. They've swapped gatekeeper, so we need a way to, we want to probably look to score here before the board state gets worse for us, because Tao will mean that our ice is going to be thinly swapped around a lot. So we do want to be scoring. We'll probably use Fairchild as our piece of ice that we're going to install with the agenda. So when we look at these two pieces of ice, I like having the Hagen and Fairchild together, because that just requires the runner gets 2 breakers or spends 3 clicks and has the money to then pull out their paperclip and install it. So the line of install off-world office, use the ASA trigger to install Fairchild 3. Can I get this to go away? Okay. So, okay, apparently not. Okay. Let's see. No, wow, it keeps coming back. Let's see if I can, for a little bit. Okay. Probably will not. Apparently it did. Cool. Anyway, install off-world office, install Fairchild 3. There's one line we lose to, I think potentially, which is click 1 overclock. We could resin the Fairchild, and then they can click through it and then install the paperclip with the overclock money and break the Hagen. But short of that single play, we really do want this ready to score right away. And then we can put the Spin Doctor in server 1, and then, install the macrophage on R&D, and then play our fully out for lots of credits. So we see Veil Runner puts it behind the slot machine, which I don't like, because the slot machine doesn't end the run, doesn't matter because it's behind the Fairchild, so it's never going to tax them out. So I really do think you want it behind the Hagen. Even though the runner has a paperclip, you want them to have to spend them. This is never going to stop the runner, so I think it's actually a fairly incorrect choice to install it here. But we see the Spin Doctor install, we see the Macrophage install, and then we see Fully Op. Because we have another Fully Op and 2 sprints in hand, I think it's fine to just take the money because we really will need it to res. Because with 8 credits, we actually can't res both ice and remote. I'm not really even threatening to. And if the runner does have another Shred Lightly, we're in quite a bad spot in terms of resing. We'd have to res neither. We couldn't res the slot machine to keep them out if we to. And again, if we had the Hagen here, we would have enough money to do that. So I'm overemphasizing a point, and it's going to end up not mattering at all, I think. Oh, okay. No, the runner went and trashed the Jeeves, which makes some sense. It means that we don't get to score the off-world law. So we're starting to see agendas pile up in HQ. So sprint, to me, I don't love here. I would look at something like gamble. So sprint makes sense the more I think about this turn, because I have 2 actions I want to do, which is hedge fund and advance. But I don't have anything else I want to do with these cards. I don't really want to spend 2 credits to put a Hagen protecting this remote. I don't feel like I need to ice up HQ or R&D. Don't need to ice up the Spin Doctor at all. I don't want to install any of these new remotes. So the Spin Doctor basically lets me move one of these agendas out of my hand, because I would love to rather score a GFI instead of going score, 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 because that would mean I need 4 agendas to win instead of 3. So sprint just sort of ends up functioning here to clean up the hand, and because I don't have another play, it's a decent call. So it's shuffled back your choice of Cyberdeck Sandbox and Luminal Transubstantiation, and probably the Hagen here, because the runner already has access to paperclip, so Hagen's the weakest it's going to be. Jeeves install is fine, not amazing. Yeah, if we've just installed the Jeeves, I would much rather play a fully operational here than advance. If the runner really goes to come and contest this, we can protect it. With fully operational, instead of being at 7 credits, could have had 2, 4, 6, 8. We could be at 15 credits here, which is enough to protect both of these servers. And so if you can be greedy in a border state like this, I would recommend it. Because your punishment here is just losing this agenda in the worst case, or losing your G's in the worst case. And with the runner's credit total, it's just not that much of a threat. Alright, so the runner's just going to spend their whole turn drawing, basically installing an Anacam, and so now we're in a great spot. We get to res the Jeeves, advance, 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 score. Runner's going to swap something, so they swapped our Fairchild 3 over to protecting the Jeeves. We still have Hagen Slot Machine, but again, Hagen is more of a threat than Hagen Slot Machine, so I still think this should have been our scoring server, but I should stop meandering on about that. So we've got 1 click left. I am a big fan of slamming this luminal transubstantiation down, just with the runner only at 3 credits. Very, very hard for them to have a plausible scoring stealing threat, and if they do, they will be at 4 points. They will still need 2 more agendas to win because of the way this deck is constructed. And the more time we give them, the worse it's going to be for us. So I actually dislike playing the hedge fund here. I think it's too slow compared to the tempo you could have by just installing the luminal transubstantiation, putting a threat down for the runner, making them spend their tools. Alright, so we see the Tau put down a turning wheel, which is a real threat for us. One of the ways that you can win with these decks is ignoring the remotes when they get to a state like this, and just running HQ and R&D when they're really cheap, building up turning wheel counters, and going for a big dig. Because this Asa is not on Vacheron, it's instead on GFI, it means the runner always needs to steal 4, but the 4 points, as soon as they find the 4th agenda, they do immediately win the game. Which is a difference from some other Asa lists. So we see the runner has now drawn a lot. They've drawn half their deck. They don't have any breakers out yet. This is a Shaper deck, so it's going to be probably on 3 SMCs and 1 of each breaker. So presumably they'll have found either their Ngolo or their SMC. Very few competitive Shaper lists are not on Ngolo. The Mayfly Wu being maybe the big exception. Alright, it's our turn. We want to be aggressively scoring because we don't have that big of a window before the runner is going to have their Ngolo down with money. Wrestling Spin Doctor is fine. It ends up being great here because now we can install our Luminal Transubstantiation and then install Manic-Arm Skunkworks in the same remote. And now that Manic-Arm Skunkworks has the they must pay 5, we sort of turn the slot machine into a slightly closer to an end the run. So that is in fact what we see. Always install your agenda first time, but you know, it is what it is. Fully operational with 12 credits, we're in a pretty decent spot where we don't need to get that many credits and we can draw at least 1 time, which we do. We see another fully operational, which means we can probably be pretty greedy and take credits with the rest of these because with 1 click left, there's not that much stuff we would want to do. Maybe installing a Maryland out wide, and we'd be ditching all the cards, but we could probably ditch the hedge fund and 1 Maryland. So you could look at this hand and say, oh, I could draw 2 again to try and find cards I want to play after I score the Luminal Transubstantiation. Maybe I want to be digging for the Void, so I can install, you know, my GFI after I score the Luminal Transubstantiation with a Void, advance it once, and be threatening the win with the Jeeves on the following turn. So I think there's a good argument to be made for drawing here when my scoring remote is going to cost 7, 9, then I get to 10 from scoring, and I'll still have a click left to play econ cards. So I think, again, if you want to be more aggressive as the Corp, which I would generally recommend doing, you probably draw 1 extra time with fully operational here and run a little bit lower to the ground. I really don't love this ice install. It's just very expensive to not change that much. You're spending 2 credits and you could just trash the slot machine that's not actually doing anything for you here. It's fine. It ends up not being that big of a deal because again the runner is still only on 3 credits. So it's going to take them a long time to do anything. They now install the Ngolo, they're on 1 credit. It's really not much of a threat. So now we get to take a super turn where we advance 3 times and now have 4 clicks left to spend. So we want to be fully upping and drawing very aggressively for a win here. Even with the gatekeeper on this remote, we're still in a good spot to score with the Manic Arm. So we're installing the Spin Doctor. So I don't, yeah, this is one of the weird things about installing the Spin Doctor here, is we're spending like if we had left the Spin Doctor, we're not shuffling back. What did we shuffle back? 2 fully operationals. So it's sort of, the idea is that we can spend a click to try and get 2 more fully operationals, which I think we do end up getting, so it ends up kind of working out. But we could have played the fully operational for the live draw first, but now that I think about it, this order is maybe a little bit better. Yeah, the awkward thing about this, of course, is we do basically blow our ASA trigger for the whole turn this way, so we don't get to install a remote and an agenda and Anoetic Void in server 1, which would win us the game immediately. So that's sort of the tempting thing about fully operational here, is you can set up to win the game next turn, and the runner has to have a very specific set of answers that makes it through Anoetic Void, Manic Arm Skunkworks, and Fairchild 3. So if you play fully operational, draw, and we do see the Anoetic Void here after the shuffle, but with 20 cards left beforehand, we've got 2 Anoetic Voids in the list. We could draw up to 10 cards, which gives us better than 50-50 chances of seeing an Anoetic Void. And one of our GFIs as well, which is would be very good for us here. So I think, again, we're just kind of drawing a little bit too little this game. I think because the runner is not managing their money very well, like they just spent a full turn, basically, not a full turn. They spend, but they do basically spend, 2 clicks just getting back up to credits that are sort of close to be threatening something. But now this is starting to look a little bit more scary, right? Now they have access to SMC, Ngolo, and Paperclip, so now just our ice can never protect the server. We actually need the Manic Arm and Anoetic Void. And we don't have any threat to win the game next turn, unless we draw into a GFI here, which we don't. So I think we want to probably be drawing for it while the runner is still on low credits. Now we've seen 2 sure gambles in the bin, 1 dirty laundry, and no creative commission. So there's a lot of money left in this runner deck. So we are on a bit of a clock here. So I don't like installing the sandbox while we still have the option to draw and find a GFI that would actually win us the game. So again, yeah, we've probably only drawn. You want to be drawing with fully operational and ASA a lot more, because these 27 credits are worth very little. We could res all of our ice with 27 credits, but we don't want to. We want to win the game. You win the game by scoring on agendas quickly. So runner's gonna play overclock. We definitely res because it's very expensive. They let us fire drafter. You always add fully operational to hand. Always, always, always adding the G's here is bad for a bunch of reasons. Most notably, it's trashable, so the runner can just trash it out of the hand. If we want to worry about having them being able to trash the Jeeves on the board, you just install the Jeeves with the second subroutine on drafter. So this is just sort of a mistake. And the Nico campaign, you install Rashida is going to do more for you in a lot of cases. I don't like really either of these uses of triggers. Eli is the best ice to protect that, though, for sure. Macrophage, I'm not sure why you're resing this here. It lets Tao swap it into the scoring remote and not care because it becomes trace 1 to end the run. It's just sort of a you're giving information and you're not breaking up the conduit play at all. You're just really kind of giving the runner gets to pay 1 credit to walk through this, and it doesn't matter. They've got no viruses in the heap, no viruses on hand. You don't even have a Cyberdeck sandbox scored. They chose not to pay into it, which is a little silly. Paying 1 credit to see 1 card in R&D is a pretty good deal if you can get it. Okay, yeah, and that's what they're gonna they redo and actually do that properly. And then we see the runner use their SMC for conduit anyway. I think this is a bad play because the runner is never going to run through this multiple times. But regardless of that bad play, now the macrophage looks okay on R&D, but the runner basically is outplaying themselves here. And then just drawing and making money with creative commission, so their turn is looking pretty fine. And they're got another SMC down so they can still get out Ika. And so this is where us not drawing for GFI hurts, because we could have won the game this turn, potentially, actually pretty easily. We still have 20, we would have 20 credits instead of 21, and there's just lots of like, we don't need these 20 credits. We're gonna spend a whole turn scoring a sandbox. We've purged 1 virus counter, make a little bit of money back, but we actually have to win with this remote again, giving the runner more chances. Now, we got pretty lucky this game. HQ is very safe. This remote's very safe. R&D is very safe. Like, we're not actually going to lose, but we could have lost, I think, against slightly sharper runner play, as we'll sort of see when we pull the replay back the other way around. Runner's just sort of not exactly sure what's going on here. Okay, looks like they're doing some weird resets. They overclock into R&D to get in for cheap, and now they're going to go back in for a conduit run. Steal, yep, that's a GFI we would love to have in hand. That's another GFI we would love to have had in hand 2 turns ago. They were in the deck. There's 3 of them. We had a good chance. We had good. Spin Doctor, we finally found the last GFI. We should just slam that in server 1 and advance it. That's exactly what we do. Now the runner has 1 turn. Got 4 credits. It's very hard for them to get in twice, let alone once even. So let's see what they do. Going to make a conduit run after, right? They've creative commission click 1 and 2, and now that gives them 5 credits, which is enough to make it into R&D with the swap of the gatekeeper onto R&D. And this is part of why resing macrophage before the conduit's out feels a little bad, because you could have trashed and removed it from the game if you had held on to it. This is a very nice Jackson or Spin Doctor shuffle, because you can lower the density. You should not shuffle Cyberdeck's Virus Suite in, though, I think, because it will just get trashed for a credit, and you're going to win next turn anyway, so you want non-trashables, but I guess it doesn't matter, so it's fine. Any 2 cards actually functionally works here, but generally I would recommend against shuffling in 1-cost trashables, because you'll be giving the runner more accesses down the road. And we win the game as the Corp, which is fantastic. So I think, we went through the whole game. My intention was really to just focus on the beginning, and I sort of went off script for that. The biggest lessons we have from this game, really, especially from the early turns, is we were a little bit slow on turn 3 in particular. We took a very kind of slow line. You want to be drawing a little bit more with this deck, and you want to sort of force the runner to have answers, because all of your ice, Gatekeeper, Slot Machine, Hagen, Fairchild 3, Ansel 1.0, and Drafter is punishing the face check. And the more stuff you get in the bin and sort of on the board, it gets sort of not exponentially, but maybe quadratically more scary for the runner, and you want to be putting out threats quickly. Um, so this corp probably should have used fully op to draw more often. They would have probably won instead of winning on turn 11. They could have won on turn 9. Yeah, they could have won on turn 10. And that's actually a huge deal, right? That's 4 fewer clicks the runner could have to steal your agendas. And then there was some weird stuff with ice placement and when to res ice, but that ended up not being as relevant. But we are at the half-hour mark, so I'm going to stop here with the recording for the corpse side, and I will do the runner side of this matchup. I might record it right after this or slightly later, but the uploads will probably be a little bit staggered.